Hi, this is Sue Greenwell with awakenstories.com. I'm here today again with Daniel James. Hey, Daniel, how are you?
Good, Sue. Thanks for having me a third time.
I'm so glad you're back. We had such positive response from your last two interviews. People loved your stories, and I thought, well, I suspect you have many more stories, and I would love to hear them. In the last video we did, you were telling us about the Orion Wars and your latest project, the story of Oma.
Yes.
And when you were telling me that story, I was interrupting you. I was like acting all hyper and crazy. I felt this excitement. I don't know why. I just wanted to like pull every shred of detail out of you all at once. So that is indicating that there's a reason, like this is real. Maybe I was there. I don't know. Just very exciting information. So I wanted to share a vision that I had. Like, I was walking around in my regular life here the last week, wondering why the heck was I so dang excited? And this one particular vision kept coming back to me. So maybe I'll start with my story, if that's okay.
Please do.
Yeah. So I had this vision in 2017, and it was so vivid and so real. I was like there. It was like I felt like I was there. So I went into meditation, and I shot, like, it's like, you talked about your consciousness shooting into another body. I was in another body, and I looked down, and I'm walking in about 1.5 feet of like dirty water, swampy water. Now, in our normal lives, we would have said something like, oh, I'm in a swamp, right? But this is what I said to myself. I'm on a swamp planet. So I'm on a swamp planet. And I'm like, huh? So I look down, and I'm shackled, and there's a whole group of people shackled together.
Wow.
And I'm about, let's just say about 4 feet. I'm kind of like a fairy or an elf looking person. I've got like kind of a black, like battle gear on, and I have telepathy. And the person I'm with is a Chewbacca, a Wookiee. He's 2 people up from us. Okay, so there's a whole line of people. Not all of them were with us. So I'm shackled, and this other guy, who is actually someone you would know the name of, but we're not going to go there. It's someone famous. And I realized that, they're going to kill us basically, and we need to get away. So we're kind of arguing through oh my God, I can't talk. Telepathy. See, I'm so excited about whether we should save the other prisoners or not. And I said, yes, we've got to save them. So we come up with our plan, and we're kind of in a swampy open area, like a field. It's all nasty and dirty. And we come up, and there's woods on both sides of us, like woods, trees, nasty, swampy looking. And we execute our plan, but at that same moment, we're ambushed on both sides. So nobody made it out. Okay. But for some reason, when you were telling your story, that's the vision that kept coming to me. And I don't know why. I don't know anything, but it was so real. And my recognition was like kind of instantaneous that I'm in another body, and this was a real experience. It wasn't like, oh, I wonder, where I am or anything like that. It was very cool.
That's awesome, Sue. I really like that. And one thing I want to say in response to that story is that I would like people to understand that when we have visions like this, whether it's in a dream or an out-of-body experience or in meditation or a vision, these aren't necessarily your imagination just generating a fictional scenario, but we're tapping into other incarnations and other lifetimes where you're looking into a moment into that life. And the scenario you described, I gotta say that I've heard similar settings, and I'm only inclined to assume that you may have been involved in a lot of the wars that I talk about, where there is conflict. There's real conflict with a lot of a micmac of alien races, extraterrestrials on other planets, and you maybe peered into a moment of that experience in that lifetime this could be a variety of conflicts in another time period. There was the destruction of Tiamat. There's, of course, which I always talk about, the Orion Wars. And, you got like, there's a lot of conflicts that
It's
people don't know about.
infinite because, it's not just this galaxy universe. There's so many more out there, but
Mhm.
just this one alone gives us so many possibilities.
Infinite.
And yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? So that kept coming back to me time after time throughout the last week. And I thought, well, I've got to mention it. Maybe it dovetails into what you were talking about.
I'm glad that you told me that, especially when you
Yeah,
described your appearance and what you were wearing. It
yeah,
definitely seems like some sort of military situation, some sort of,
yeah,
combat situation. And
yeah,
I think a lot of us were there and are there now in terms of, incarnations, maybe not exactly being past lives, but parallel lives.
right.
As the time works differently outside of like the 3D matrix. So these are things that we're tapping into right now. And I would encourage you to investigate that
Right,
scenario more in
right,
meditation, because you never know what that version of yourself can teach you now.
right.
And in what ways. I know this is really complicated and we get into quantum physics, but in what ways you can actually influence that moment, that
Right,
version of yourself
right.
too, in terms of time not being linear. When we have multiple incarnations that are spread out over different realities, densities, and dimensions, we're always affecting each other in energetic ways we don't
Okay.
understand.
Right,
You could
right,
continue to investigate that, absolutely, and see, what more you can uncover about it.
right, right. What I like about that and why I would say that's a real experience is because the level of detail was incredible. And the
Yeah.
fact, like I said, oh, I'm on a swamp planet. I didn't say I'm in a swamp, which, the normal person would have looked around and said, I'm in a swamp. But it's also not only the level of detail, it's the feeling there.
Mm,
And we were trying to figure out how to get out, and we were like trying to save the rest of the people. There were maybe 6 or 7 other people that were also chained together. And, again, we were trying to save everyone, and no one lived in that case. But yeah, it was quite interesting.
okay, it's just a couple questions if you can
Yeah,
recall it all. Do you know what the other beings looked like, or was there like a military force or a malevolent force that was in charge of you guys, like a handler or?
I can't see that now.
Okay.
I have it written down, but I don't know that I have that detail. Every being had a different appearance, but
Yeah.
the one I focused on was Chewbacca, or a Wookiee, because
Mhm.
from Star Wars, because that was the person I was with. We were on the same side. I don't think we were friends, but we were on the same team. And then there were other ones that were different races, but I don't actually remember what they look like at this moment.
Sure. A lot of times, our subconscious will blank those out,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
That's very fascinating.
yeah. Isn't it
I'm
interesting?
I'm
Yeah,
inclined to think that, it was during one of the conflicts, and it very well could have been the same one that I tell
yeah,
stories about too.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, we were like a rebel force or whatever. We were undercover, if you will,
Yeah.
and evidently got caught. I don't know any of those details.
And, isn't it so funny in that incarnation of yours, and mine as well, and these other conflicts, that it's almost
Right,
like other reflections, other aspects of ourselves, is like Daniel
right.
and Sue. We
Yeah,
have similar qualities to us in
yeah,
certain ways in our
yeah,
human lives.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I've always been very interested in science fiction, fantasy, books, movies, whatever. I do read graphic novels once in a while. I don't play video games, so I've missed that boat. It's a generational thing, but always very interested in anything out of the ordinary.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
one thing I love to tell people about that is when you have an interest or an attraction to anything specific, like let's say, for
right,
example, when we're talking about TV and movies, because that's one of the most, common ways that the depiction of other realities can happen. Is, let's say you're more so attracted to like the Lord of the Rings universe,
right,
like the
right,
Hobbit, things like that, elves. But then another person is more attracted to, say, Star Wars,
right,
or like the Marvel universe when it gets into aliens and things like that. And I think it's because our mainstream entertainment, books, graphic novels, television, film, anything like
right,
that, they're actually pulling from the truth.
Right.
And what they're doing is they're depicting real versions of reality that exists. It's just being created and then depicted and advertised in a way
Yeah.
that's fictional.
Yeah.
So that we don't actually believe that it's real. We don't truly investigate those areas of existence. So if you have an attraction or an affinity to, say, for example, sci-fi, like I do, everything my whole life has just been all sci-fi.
Yeah.
It's because we associate and relate to that environment, to that aesthetic, to that technology, to those beings that we see. Television and film being the closest representations we can get to that reality again. We're attracted to it because in some way, shape, or form, we know that we have a connection to it. Maybe we come from there, or maybe we exist there now in
Right.
another lifetime.
Right.
And that familiarity, it's remembered on an energetic
Cellular
level,
Yes.
cellular
Yeah.
DNA. So
Yeah.
totally, I get that attraction. I'm there
Yeah.
with you.
So let me tell you another little story. I guess this
Please
is
do.
going to be my story hour.
Today's Sue's interview with Daniel James by Sue Greenwald.
My kids and I would go to New York City like every December, like as a little like tradition to get away. When I was on the East Coast, it was fun. So about 4 years ago, let's say, we stayed in Jersey City, which is across the river, and we took the train in, and we came into a building that was recently built called the Oculus. All right. And so, we're getting off and I'm trying to figure out where we're all going. And my daughter says, look up. Now, you've probably met my daughter before. She's crazy psychic and she's amazing. And I look up, I'm like, oh my God, we are literally in the belly of a beast. We're in a giant rib cage. I do have pictures of this too. And I was going to put it out on my site, but I don't want to be, have anything negative come through. So I look up and it's all white and you can see the ribs and the spine of this beast. And this building is huge. So it's kind of like a typical train station. There are shops and things and different exits and all that. But I'm like, what are we in? Are we in a whale? And she's like, no. She said, it's the beast like the Avengers movie, the first one, where these flying crocodilians come to New York City. They're coming to attack New York City. They're giant and they have battle armor. But the interesting thing is at the end, their tail has like these little spikes it's like their back is smooth and then it has these spikes toward the end, right? So she said, we're in one of those. And I was like, whatever. So I'm like fascinated. I took some pictures. We get out of the building. We're walking around. And then we go a couple blocks away and I see the outside of the building. And it's, let's call it smooth. And then it has these spikes on the end. And I was like, are you kidding me? She knew. So I took the pictures. We go home. We go about our business. And I was walking through somewhere and that Avengers movie was on. And that exact part where they're flying over New York City was on. And I looked and I saw, the movie and I was like, she was right. It's shocking. So then the question is, why are we building a building that looks like that in New York City? And why is it nobody else is even looking at it? Like, why would someone consciously build a building like that? And the only thing I could think of is it's like kind of putting it in the energetic field, that's where we're all going to end up, kind of.
That's awesome. I've definitely seen the movie several times and I know exactly what you're talking about. I can picture those. And New York City is a weird place. I lived there for 4 months in the summer of 2017. And I think that there's a lot of weird, like it's a hub for what I call as the controllers as well in terms of their technology. And I know that, like, if you're familiar with like the secret space programs and the SSP, they have like multiple jump rooms in New York City. And so I'm not surprised that they like to advertise those things and put them right in the collective consciousness, in the collective unconscious, and get it right there in front of people.
I think that's what they were doing. And of course, my daughter noticed it first. But once I looked up, of course, that's my whole focus of the day, right? When I'm taking the pictures and all that. I have a few. I mean, they're not professional pictures or whatever, but you can see what I'm talking about. So that was fascinating. And also on that day, we took the subway toward like Central Park. We were going to, I have two more stories. Okay. Maybe.
Please do. This is this a story hour with Sue Greenwald about
Story.
Sue Greenwald? Let's go.
Yeah. So that same day, we take the subway towards Central Park, and we're going in the subway, and it's all tile. And then there's an eye made out of mosaic. And then about, let's say 10 feet down, another single eye made out of mosaic on both sides of this tunnel to go down to the subway. Now I took a picture of it again, and I'm like, that, number one, it's super creepy. And someone spent a lot of money and trouble to put those eyes, along the hallway. And it's right near the financial district too, by the way. So then we get in, and so I've taken a picture. I'm like, okay, that's creepy. It's clearly some sort of sign or whatever. Then I go, and there's like a room that's we'll call it roped off or whatever. And it's a mosaic of the flat earth map. All right. And again, I took a picture of it. So I, went up like this and took a picture. It didn't turn out perfect, but you can get the gist of what it is. What is that doing in a subway tunnel?
Very bizarre.
Totally bizarre. Okay. So the story continues. So we go to Central Park, and we're all happy. It's winter. And we get up, you know how they've got rocks sticking out of Central Park, giant rocks. So I'm out of my mind excited because I love going up on those rocks. So we climb up the first rock, and we're standing there starting to take pictures, and I get an intuitive hit, like, boom, this isn't a rock. What? So, I'm taking pictures, and I get it again and again. And I look down, and I'm like, well, this is interesting, because the grain of a rock, you would think the grain of a rock is going to be horizontal with the earth kind of, right? And you can see where it might have been pushed through the earth or whatever, but a rock would have more or less a horizontal grain. This didn't. So I looked down at it, and the grain is, well, facing up. So you can see the ridges in the rock, if you will. And I'm like, this isn't a rock. Well, what is it? So I tell my daughter, I said, this isn't a rock. And she kind of rolls her eyes like, you're an idiot. Like, of course it's not a rock, she says. What? So I said, well, what is it? It's a spaceship. So I'm like, at that point, I can't even think of anything else. I'm out of my mind, right? I'm excited, and I want to know more details, and we're in a crowd, and I'm trying to get information from her. But basically, it was a spaceship that, we'll call it, crashed, and it is huge. It's like a mothership. It's giant. Okay. And it's still operational. And only those that know can operate it. All right. So as we were walking around the rock, we were, sightseeing and just fooling around, I got psychically attacked. So there are protectors for that ship, or those that don't want us to know where it is and what it is. So just interesting. That was just that day, but kind of cool stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There's also a building in New York City that I walked by a few times that I looked at, in part of the architecture of the building itself is actually like a spherical UFO or a saucer UFO shape.
Yeah.
There, you know what I mean? That stuff is there in New York City. Like I said, it's a weird place.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on that we don't know about. We're so involved with a subsection of our life, we don't realize a bigger picture. So cool.
Very cool.
So cool.
For the 4 months that I lived there, I didn't go to those rocks or those UFOs that you've seen. And now I kind of wish I would have. So like, I just hadn't gone there particularly. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. I missed it. I missed that.
Yeah. Well, the rocks are cool, and, people go up there and they sit, they take pictures or whatever. But if you go, take a harder look next time.
I will.
Yeah. So that was that particular day. There was a lot of stuff that happened. I'm going to say that was 2018. I could look at the date on my pictures. But like I said, I kind of want to share them, but I don't want anything negative and creepy to come out of them.
Right.
So,
I understand that.
yeah, because you probably know this. When movies are shot, they can put attachments in them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Oh yeah, I know all
uh,
about it. They could do energetic programming. They can also do technological programming that's actually
totally,
coded into the light that
totally.
projects through televisions. Trust me, yeah, I'm a weirdo. I know all about this stuff.
Yeah. So I remember it was I had a everybody came to my house for dinner one day, maybe Thanksgiving or something, I don't know what. And what we used to do is rent cheesy movies and all like sit around and complain about how bad the movie was. Like it's just fun. So we were watching, I'm gonna say it was maybe a King Kong movie. Not the Jack Black one, but the one after that. I don't remember the name of it, but King Kong Island or something, whatever. And all I can remember is so I'm in the kitchen, I come in to sit down, and there's a scene where there's a dragonfly in the forefront of the movie, and there's like the monster or whatever walking in the back. So maybe, yeah, I think it was King Kong or maybe Godzilla. I don't know. But, anyways, I sit down and that scene pops up, and I felt a metallic click from that dragonfly. My daughter and I both jumped, and it was some sort of an attachment that was embedded into that movie.
Hmm.
And we both jumped at the same time. And then we had to clear and all this other stuff. I'm not sure what the intention was. It wasn't good. So a lot of times you'll go and watch these popular movies and you'll get dark attachments that you don't even know they're in there.
100%. I teach
Yeah,
people about this all the time. The way that entertainment is, programmed. There's
right.
agendas behind it, whether,
Of
like you said,
course.
whether it's energetic or whether
Yeah.
it's coded in the technology. But we oftentimes will be watching these movies and not even know the mind control or the symbolism and the metaphors and how
Yeah.
they affect your subconscious, and then the energy that's coded in some of the visuals
Exactly.
can transfer sort of like negative energy
Yes.
to the viewers, and then they take that with them throughout the rest of their day and don't even know the way they're being affected.
Exactly.
Totally.
Yeah. And that happens with music, like when they
Music.
record the master song, if you will, basically, we're going to call it a spell, is put on that song. So even though the words may be positive or in our mind, they're positive, we're still getting attachments from those songs.
You're absolutely right. And did you
Yeah.
know? I like to talk about the technology behind these things because it's
Yeah.
both obviously intention and energy. It's almost like energy magic and word magic.
Yeah.
But there's a technology actually that I know for a fact has been used since at least the 30s. Okay, that's how far back. Anytime you're getting into broadcast, whether it's just radio or video, and you're broadcasting a signal to a device, you can actually take, let's just not even talk about video. Let's take just audio music that you hear on the radio
Right.
or on your computer or your cell phone, that the people who make the music from a technical side, they can actually code real data inside the
Right.
waveform
Right.
of the audio itself that is invisible to look at. And you don't hear it with like your naked ears or
Right.
see it with your naked eyes, but it's coded there. It reaches you on a subliminal level. And
Exactly.
you can actually take, okay, if you have the program, the software for it, now this is going to freak people out. You can take a song, a mainstream song by like a really big pop star or heavy rock or even rap. Rap is like a industry that's heavily
Right.
attacked
Right.
with mind control. Uh, you can take the waveform of the song, and if you have the right software, you can break into the wave. So if you're looking at this in like a music program, you'll just see these little squiggly lines.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see these little waves. That's a waveform. But inside that data, which to us is invisible, you can actually there is data hidden inside in the coding of the song
Right.
itself that if you
Right.
have the right software, you can extract, and it can actually have images in it, or it
Right.
can have different words in it that you're not hearing, but they're coded in the frequency of the
Right.
music. Now you
Right.
have to understand, if everything's energy, then so are all the elements, and even sound itself has a layer. It has a weight of density to it. even though you can't like see it or smell it or touch it, you're still hearing it. There's still
Right.
elements involved in carrying that signal to your 3D senses, to your organs that perceive sound. And so they have the technology to code data that's invisible inside sound waves that are affecting us on a subconscious level that you would never know is there. But now you might be having certain feelings or certain emotions after you hear the music or you listen to it, and maybe it puts you in a good mood for a minute. But what is the song about? And how is it influencing your mood that carries throughout the rest of the days or the weeks or the months? And then you multiply this on like a mass scale with, anything that they want to program the civilian population
Right.
into believing a certain way, having certain feelings or opinions on important things. You can influence and sway people in the direction that you want by the subtle mind control and the subtle hypnosis and the subtle programming that is hidden in entertainment,
Right.
television, music. It's serious.
Right.
Like it's a thing.
Right. It's a big thing. And of course, the average person is like, they'll blow this off, but this is a big deal. And of course, we know they do that with TV and movies as well. And like, I think it would be like, say, in the 50s or 60s, you might see, your program or whatever, and then they slip a frame in here or there.
Exactly.
And, of course, it's going so fast that our brain doesn't register it, but our subconscious does.
And get
So,
this, you're absolutely right. I love that you're saying that.
yeah.
Do you know that when you're watching video, doesn't matter what device, cell phone, computer, tablet, television, doesn't matter. When you're watching video, video is only a succession of still frames very quickly in different
Right.
frame rates,
Right.
24, 30, 60, 90, 120. These are frame rates that are of a succession of still images that are in a container. And the container is the file format.
Okay.
So they can actually code totally unrelated information and data and material in between the still frames
Right.
that are, like you said, are flickering so
Right.
fast
Right.
you don't see it with your naked eye.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not even, you can't even take the video file and put it in an editing program and slow it down and see what I'm talking about, because it's coded in the light,
Right. Right.
light that flickers, and that you can't see it with your eyeballs.
Right.
It's crazy. And I've studied
Yeah.
all of this technology for years, and I've seen it put to use. I know that I've been affected by it. If you watch TV, if you listen to the radio, if you watch the news, you have been affected in some way to some degree.
Right. Right.
It's wild.
Yeah. And of course, with music, we know that the optimum hertz is 432.
Correct.
But our music, isn't it recorded at 428 or something like that? So we're not getting the exact frequency for the uplifting music that we should. I know that years ago there was a app that you could get on your phone, 432 hertz player.
Converts it.
Yeah. So I downloaded it. I put a song through it, and I was shocked at how beautiful the same song I listened to all the time sounded through that player. But they jammed up my phone. I had to delete it. Couldn't
That's
use
wild, isn't it?
Isn't it crazy? But yeah, it was so beautiful. It was incredible.
They changed the tuning of the frequency, the
Yeah.
harmonics, and the octaves to be discordant
Yes.
instead of resonant to what
Yes.
the body, the physical vessel, maybe even the earth vibrates at on a natural, organic.
Exactly.
I studied that as very, very
Yeah.
much so.
Isn't it crazy? Yeah.
It's sad.
Yeah. It's totally sad. There's an agenda, of course, a dark agenda, and it's either control or, it's unhealthy stuff.
And I will tell people this, because whenever I do a podcast called That's So Meta, and we always talk about this dark stuff, but we always try to leave people with a positive perspective on it or put a positive spin on it so that we can empower them and not tell them these terrible, scary, dark things and then leave them like, all right, thanks for listening. Goodbye. Good luck out there. So the reason why I feel like it's important is knowledge is power. And the more you know from the right perspective, the more your consciousness creator beings.
Yeah.
I think that we are the creators behind our own reality. The problem is that if we don't know that, then our creator abilities can get hijacked and then used against us.
Exactly.
So what I would say is, okay, let's say you're afraid now. You've listened to Daniel and Sue talk about how dangerous the radio is, and music and TV's like, don't go watch that Marvel movie. It'll rot your brain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But you can watch these things because there's no way we can really avoid all of the frequency waves that we're constantly saturated in, but knowledge is power. So if you understand that these hidden programmings exist, you can then choose to not be affected by them anymore. It's a choice. We create our reality and we are more in charge than we think. So what does that mean? It means that, well, next time you go to the movies, that's okay. Go to the movies. I'm going to the movies tomorrow. I bought tickets, to go see a film, but you can go in there more empowered, knowing that there might be subtle subconscious metaphors or energy waves or anything like that that might be targeted to limit you in some way, or hurt you,
Right,
or
right,
direct your energy and your feelings and your emotions in a certain way that's not constructive to you. You know now that that happens when you listen to the radio, when you're on your computer, when you're watching the next movie, and you can choose to not be affected by it, and it will stop. You can stop the effects of these technologies against you once you know they're there, and then you choose to not play that game anymore, and then
right,
it won't have the same
right,
effect on you anymore.
right. Well, I am very aware of it. Like I'm sensitive to it. So of course I'm not listening to rap music and a lot of screaming heavy metal and stuff like
Sure.
that. I listen to what we'd call yoga music around,
Mhm.
around the house or whatever. But I am sensitive to what I allow in my field,
Right.
okay, in my life. So I'm not watching regular TV, definitely not watching the news. I'm careful of even the videos I watch. Like I might look at the title, and if I think it's worthwhile, I might start to listen, and then I get a vibe if the person's even telling the truth.
Right.
Why waste my time if they have a negative agenda? Not listening. And that kind of stuff. I wear a Smarty charmer. I don't know if you can see this.
Mhm.
And I believe you met Smarty, but it
I've met
has
Smarty and I've seen his charms a million times.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the Smarty charm that you can buy at smartiescorner.com basically has protective and healing frequencies. So I radiate a field around me of protection and uplifting vibration and healing. And that goes to all those that I pass in the street or whatever. But I feel like that just adds a layer of, like, we'll call it passive protection, that I don't have to consciously always be ready for battle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think, though, you need to be careful in your life. Like, who are you hanging out with? What are you talking about? Where are you getting your information? Really basic stuff, because your environment is, you're saturating your energetic field in that environment. And you
We
you
were.
might have heard this story already. I don't remember what decade, maybe the 90s. They gathered all the popular rapper guys in a room, and they made them sign a non-disclosure. And they said, and I believe the meeting was run by a bunch of guys that owned prisons. So they're privately owned. Okay. And they're like, okay, we want you to start, making rap about, murder, all this stuff that we've got now. And a bunch of them said, no, we won't do it. And they were like kind of threatened. So they were
Yeah.
forced to change the flavor of rap, because it wasn't as negative and heavy, 20 or 30 years ago as it is now. Well, now listen to a rap song. It's screaming, crimes against everybody. They're all going to kill each other. It's very negative. And what it does is it incites the person toward violence
Correct.
and negative behaviors. Well, they filled the prisons, you know, and of course they get money from the government for filling those prisons. So, anyways, we're a little bit off on the tangent, but it is a real thing. And of course, they went in with an agenda. And of
Hmm.
course,
And
there's always an agenda. We just don't know about it.
I would argue that everything is agenda based. And
Pretty
I know
much.
that that sounds pretty limiting. It might even sound pretty fear based, but I'm just coming from a perspective that it's like, I'm not afraid and I'm not trying to instill fear. I'm just trying
Right.
to spread awareness.
Yeah.
And so to double back on what you said, because I totally agree, whether it's the entertainment we consume, music, television, film, whether it is food that we eat, things that we drink. You know, we all know about the toxins and the harmful things that are in
Right.
our air, food, and water. What I want to tell people to leave them with a more empowered perspective is that although there is the concept of the path of least resistance. So what does that mean? Okay, well, that means that, like, let's say, for example, we know soda is very toxic for like a million different reasons. But so the path of least resistance would be don't drink that soda.
Right.
The path of least resistance would be don't listen to that rap song. But we, like I said, you said, we live in a saturated world where we're constantly being bombarded and advertised a million different uh, things to choose,
Right.
and in things that are influencing in a certain direction and having a certain
Right.
opinion about it. So the path of least resistance would be to try to remove yourself from it or limit your consumption of the thing. But I want to tell you also that at least you have eyes to see and ears to hear. When you know these things are happening, you know that you're constantly saturated in something that is trying to hijack your
Right.
feelings, your emotions, your beliefs. You can choose to nullify it. You can choose to cancel it in the moment, whether it's a food item, drink, or you know that you're like in a car in an environment where they're listening to really toxic music that you feel it doesn't really
Right.
like
Right.
resonate with you.
Yeah.
You can choose not to be negatively affected by it by
Right.
knowing that it may come pre-programmed with an intention. And
Right.
then you just say, however that method is for you. I teach a lot of different things, but whatever your method is for you,
Right.
stop it right in its tracks, let it go. And now you're like totally shielded from
Yeah.
the effects of that thing because now you know that it's there. So
Right. Have you noticed, and I don't have regular TV, but I don't even know why I would know this, but I used to have regular TV, but have you noticed how in the evening they start bringing out like the Subway commercials, the Arby's commercials, the pizza, and it's all this heavy duty meat, fat,
junk.
heavy foods. And you're sitting there watching whatever show you're watching, and then you're ready to like to go, raid the cupboard of other things. You're not really hungry, but just a couple bowls of chips will do, or whatever it is. It's like they are just putting that in your subconscious that you need these foods, right?
Right.
So
Same with like what is the most common commercial advertisement in between television programmings? It's pharmaceutical pills and
yeah,
treatments.
yeah,
It's like literally there's more ads for pharmaceuticals and treatments,
right,
Western medical treatments than any ad.
yeah,
It's either
yeah,
food, it's either fast food, or they're selling your health to you or your
yeah,
lack thereof
yeah,
constantly.
yeah. Sad, really sad. And now I feel like crying. So,
Well, let's
but
cry it out, Sue. I can take a cry.
the point is, we have a choice. So, can we control everything? No. You can control what you can control. So, like, let's say it's food. Have healthy food in the house. Choose not to drink the chemical sodas or whatever. Um, you know, Eat organically if you can. Grow your own food. Make sure you're full when you go to watch your TV at night or whatever. There's healthier. There's ways around everything. We
Right.
still have to breathe air. Of course, the air, I, I don't want,
Geoengineering. I won't
yeah,
say it.
yeah.
We won't go
You have
there.
to
That's
breathe air,
another.
but like there's certain things you can control. You can filter your water.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. So there's things you can control. Is it perfect? No. It's better than not controlling it though. You'll be a healthier and more balanced person overall if you can control some of those components.
Here's what I'll say.
Yeah,
Simplify it. Be conscious about your consumption. Be conscious about your
right.
television, your film, your music. Be conscious
Yeah,
about your food and your drinks. Be conscious about where you live and the people you
exactly.
interact with, and that way when
Yeah,
you are in situations or you're subject to a
yeah,
certain type of consumption, be conscious about it so
yeah,
that you're more in control of the effects.
yeah. Right. And that really goes with everything. You know what I mean? Like just be aware. You can choose how you want to live. You don't have to take what's handed to you. Choose how you want to live. Choose what you want to believe. You know what I mean? So we're way off on a tangent. Let's reel it back in. But I wanted to tell you one other thing. And when we talked last week and you were telling me about your project, the story of Oma, I got so excited. I was interrupting, and I just was like, the excitement I felt was overwhelming. And I kind of saw a vision of like a graphic novel or something while you're like, I see a series. I don't know if it's a movie, animated graphic novels, but I can see that this could be a foundation for something bigger. So that would be pretty exciting.
Well, thank you for saying so, and I
Yeah,
truly hope
yeah,
so. I'm
yeah.
free from expectation, and I'm not insistent on any particular outcome.
Mm,
I'm just sort of directing and channeling my highest excitement and passion in
yeah,
making this short film and a couple of vignettes that go with it as well. And then whatever manifests as a result of that,
awesome,
I will be so very grateful.
awesome. So I've done, I'd say 95% of the talking, which I guess I like doing. Do you have any other like vision stories?
I do. I do have
Okay.
one I could
All
share.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We'll end this one on a sci-fi note because I
All right,
think there's been a
cool.
sci-fi theme
Yeah.
to this program. Can we call it a program, Sue?
Yeah.
Is
I
that what
think
we
we
do?
are going to
We
call it
make
a
programming.
program. Yeah.
Okay. So this vision that I had. Okay, I teach a quantum meditation. It's a channeling technique where we connect to spirit. And when I was training myself how to do this in 2016, I had an out of body experience. You can call it an astral projection or a remote viewing type of experience that I induced on myself. But it was using this technique that I made. And so this is really exciting because this was earlier when I was new to it and experimenting. I didn't fully understand the mechanics and what would happen when I was doing this exercise that now
Right.
is like common to me. I want to share one of the earlier experiences I had and how it pertains to so much of what you and I have already discussed. And then
Okay.
a piece of it really inspired actually a piece of Oma, which is partly why I'll tell the story.
Cool.
Okay, so I'm going into a deep quantum meditation where I alter my brainwave frequencies. And I know that when I reach what we would call the channeling state, I'm sort of, it's a type of self hypnosis. And when I make the connection to spirit, where I've turned my senses now away from the 3D and I'm focused inward, I start to imagine myself drifting away from Earth. Last time I was pulled, but this time it was very gentle and ginger and gradual, for like floating into water. And I'm being pulled away from Earth, and it gets kind of black for a second. And then as my vision starts to restore, I'm what I perceive to be on another planet, similar to yours. That's why I'm telling you this.
Yep. Cool.
I'm on a beach, and the sand is black.
Hmm.
Okay. It's in the evening time. It's maybe what we would call twilight hour, I think, blue hour. It's just getting dark. And I can see the ocean. I'm right next to the ocean, and the ocean doesn't really seem very deep. It seems relatively shallow, and the water is very dark as well. So the sand is black, and the water is like a dark, dark purple. Everything is very blue, actually, because I think the time of day.
Yeah.
So I'm Daniel. I'm me, uh, and I'm standing on this beach now. So all of the sudden, out of the water, in the distance, a craft, an extraterrestrial craft, rises up from the water, and it slowly, calmly drifts to the shore, to the sand where I'm standing. It's not quick, teleporting, or making me scared at all. It's all very calm, and it's hovering. And I want to say, to be honest, it was maybe the size of like large, like maybe like a large U-Haul truck, but a little bit wider. You know what it kind of looked like is what was it? Flight of the Navigator from the 80s or 90s. Almost looked like
Right.
a,
Yeah.
what I'm talking about, this
Yeah.
metallic one. So it's
Yep.
almost that shape, but the size of like two large trucks. So it wasn't huge. It was like a one man sort of ship. It wasn't like a mothership. And it's floating on the beach. So then uh suddenly appearing next to me, no door opened, appearing next to me was almost like he was materializing out of like thin air, was a tall man. And um he must have been like six something, maybe 6'5", 6'8", like big guy. He had long, dirty blonde hair. He was very muscular, very shapely. Like, he looked very healthy. He had big blue eyes, and he had like a dark blue, dark purple, like spacesuit on. Looked kind of tactical. And he had a little glowing emblem on his upper left chest, like we see in Star Trek. He also had, so let's say if his suit was like a dark purple, it had trim everywhere. And there was a golden trim, like a gold colored trim on all of the outlines of the texture of his suit. Anywhere around his wrists, anywhere around like his shoulders, anywhere around his belt was all golden trim. And the little glowing thing was gold symbol too. So then he also had like a nice red, sort of like a red pullover, nice like regal sort of royal color red cape on. And no hat or anything like that, no helmet, just dirty blonde hair. It was pretty long, down to his shoulders at least. And the guy was huge, and he had gloves on too. And he didn't speak to me. He didn't say anything. I'm just looking at him in awe, because I'm like, okay, here I am on an alien planet. There's a UFO in front of me, and this man comes out on the ship. And so he looks at me, and then he says something in a language I don't understand, and a door opens from the ship. Okay, now there's a real door open, and a little staircase comes down like you'd see in the movies.
Yeah.
And out walks maybe like a 5 foot tall, 4.5 foot tall metal robot. A metal robot. And he looks like, super sci-fi, high tech, not so much like C3PO or any of the Star Wars characters, but he was metal. He was a silver, like a chrome silver.
Everything's chrome when they're robotic, right?
Yeah. he was definitely like an android, like a robot.
Okay.
And his head was kind of triangular shaped. Upside down triangle was the shape of his head. And he had 2 eyes and no mouth. And he was carrying a tablet like what we have, like a computer tablet. And it was black and opaque. And he was looking at all of his coding on it and all of these symbols and stuff on it. He was looking at it, like holding it in his hand, like you would like a tablet. And he kept referring to it. And it seemed like the man had sort of a telepathic communication to the robot, because he would turn to look at it and the robot turned to look at him, and they looked like they were talking without speaking.
Yeah.
And then the robot would go back to his tablet and type at stuff. And the robot walked over to me and looked at me head to toe and went back to his tablet and was typing on things. Mind you, no words, no dialogue here. It's all very visual. And then I'm looking into the ship, and another little creature pokes its head out of the ship.
Ooh.
And it's like the size of a cat, no bigger than a cat, but it wasn't a cat. And it looked like if it wanted to, it could walk upright, but it was also on all fours. It wasn't hairy like a feline. And I couldn't really make out its features, but it was like a small little creature thing that I could just see peeking out of the doorway. And then it just poked its head back in. So I don't know much about that. Right. I'm not going to go too far into the little creature thing, but it seemed curious and cute and not threatening at all. Nothing was scary or threatening about this. So then the man gestures to the android that we're done, and it can go back inside, and the robot turned around and went back inside and the door closed. So this part is what inspired a type of technology in my Oma film. So now the man, I'm going to tell you what race he is too, what species he is too.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'll get into a tangent too. One thing I don't like is blanket terms, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. So the man now, he taps his little thing here, like they do in Star Trek.
Yeah.
And then from tapping it one time, I can see particles start to form in the air in front of him. And then now there is a holographic screen, like you'd see in like Iron Man.
Yeah.
Or, Star Wars, how they have the little holograms that pop up and a little thing happens, like a little person's talking. So he's manifesting a screen in front of him that he's in control of with the power of his mind. all he did was he tapped he tapped this little button here, but now he's got mental control over what's playing out, and it's 3D little holograms like you see in the movies. Now, this was in 2016, so I got to be honest, I can't exactly remember what he showed me, but he was showing me like geometrical shapes. I think at one point he showed me like a horse running, and it was all 3D. I was looking at it in front of him, and it was projecting light, like I could see the light
Right.
playing off his face because it was dark. So it was glowing, and I'm seeing all these things play out in this little screen. And I assume he's activating me in some way. He's exposing me to some information
Right.
that he has
Right.
control over. And then he smiled at me, and then he tapped the button again, and all of the images dissolved.
Ooh.
They dissolved, and there was nothing left. So
Okay.
he shows me these little scenes playing out. And then he kind of just looked at me and smiled, and he didn't say anything. And then he like dematerialized the same way that he showed up. And then the ship turned and it went back out into the ocean.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
So you are standing there on this beach. Like, what happened? Did you just look around and then go back to your body, or what?
Right. So I'm always in control when I go into this altered state. I'm in
Yeah.
control of how long I'm there and when I come back.
Yeah.
So when the ship left and it went back into the ocean, I interpreted that as that whatever this bizarre, extraterrestrial encounter was, it was over. And I received whatever activations and downloads I needed to on a subconscious level, not fully understanding what it meant other than like the surface level,
Right.
aesthetic. I'm sure there was a lot more activations on a quantum level, but I knew it was over. So then I just leave the altered state and bring my consciousness back to my body and wake up.
Did the robot guy have antenna?
No.
Okay. And I was hoping you were going to say that it was a universal translator or something, so you could communicate, but it's a
that
cool
would be
story
cool.
regardless,
Seems
Yeah.
like, well, okay, the robot was analyzing me.
Yeah.
Maybe scientifically getting a reading on me and who I was, and scanning me and stuff. And the little creature was just a traveler of theirs, maybe a little companion like we have animals. And then the man was like the leader of the ship. And like I said, the ship was not huge. It was big enough for him and his robot and his little creature. So he was like a one-man kind of traveler. And I don't know who he was to me specifically in terms of like star family, or I don't feel like he was directly me in another incarnation like I do in other circumstances. Like he wasn't like me. I think he was a being that was available to communicate when I placed the call to have an interaction. So when I went into my altered state, I was setting the intention that I'd like to communicate to a guide or an ET consciousness that's available and interested in meeting me. And then I let my consciousness go where it needs for that can happen. So he may have just been somebody who was available to have an encounter in a meeting. So after that interaction, I learned more about ET races. So remember a minute ago, I mentioned that I don't like blanket terms.
Yep.
So what I mean by that is when you say, oh, do you know your starseed origins, or do you know where you come from, or what star race? And the first thing they always say is, I'm Pleiadian.
Yeah. And I'm like, big deal, right? Like
I'm Andromeda.
Yeah.
I'm from Sirius. I'm from Orion. Okay. I understand what you mean, but you have to understand also that, get this is very complicated too, what I'm about to say.
Okay, cool.
In every star system produces physical races like you and me of every archetypal blueprint. So we're talking avian species that are humanoid, avian hybrids. We're talking insectoid. We're talking canine. We're talking feline, humanoid like us, like Lyran. We're talking, did I already say? Okay, reptilian. We already know. So, and when I talk about these archetypes, all of if you look at every animal and species on Earth, there are physical alien races of those same species of all different shapes and sizes and colors on other planets and other star systems that are also like hybrids of each other. So we're talking about an infinite number of species, races, and civilizations that come from every star system. And so when someone tells me, I almost cringe a little bit when they're like, yeah, I'm from Cassiopeia. I'm like, okay, what race?
Or what planet?
What planet from
Yeah.
Cassiopeia? Like I work with the Za of Orion. They're from Rigel B. their race name is the Za. That's what they call their species, and their planet is also called the Za because they have a very intimate organic relationship with their Earth. But generally speaking, okay, they're a sauroid archetype, that's reptilian. So what the average person would say is like, when they say reptilian, you're generalizing like almost a countless number of races and species
Right.
that are different from
Right.
each other. You're just saying reptilian. Well, that's like hundreds of thousands of different races. So when
Right.
someone says I'm Pleiadian, I'm like, okay, but if you look at a map, you look at a star map, how many subsystems and how many star clusters and how many planet clusters are there in Pleiades? Like a
Right.
bunch.
Right.
So, and then if you take any number of those, then there are planets that have races. So when you say you're Pleiadian, that's what I would call a blanket term of like any number of a variety of different
Right.
races and species. So it doesn't tell you a lot. So the reason why I went into that big speech is because this particular guy was quote unquote Pleiadian, but he was more specifically from the Engan race. Engan. So that's Engan. Now, let me tell you guys a really cool fact about the Engan race. Anytime you're studying mythology, we have Greek mythology, Roman mythology, we have Norse mythology, any of our historical societies that have their own mythological gods and deities or races, I personally believe that they're generally speaking, even going back to Egypt, usually just extraterrestrial races. So we're not getting into like anything like religious in terms of mythology, where we're talking about any sort of entity that's depicted in history or mythology that had supernatural powers or advanced technology that Earth
Right.
civilizations didn't.
Right.
We're talking about aliens here. So when it comes to the Vikings, when it comes to Norse gods and Norse mythology, the Engan race would be the physical beings behind those stories and those technologies. So what does that mean? It means that whenever we talk about Norse gods, I think they really existed. I think that they were on Earth and they had technology and they had supernatural abilities and they gave lots of wisdom, and maybe they were destructive and violent, maybe they weren't. But I think that you can tie an ET race to every mythological or historically supernatural entity ever, can all be traced to an ET race. So the Engans are what we would call Vikings on Earth.
Interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah.
And I think we could talk for hours about this because I have a few stories of my own again.
Story hour with Sue?
Yeah, I think we should do that again. And what I was thinking, we should each make a list and then talk about some of these stories and explain a little bit more,
Sure.
because I'm not disagreeing with you. And you go to Egypt, you see almost every kind of race, even known, unknown, carved into the walls. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why would somebody spend the time to do that?
Their symbolisms and their
Yeah,
archetypes for the
yeah,
races that they probably met or interacted with, or
yeah,
anytime that you talk about Egyptian mythology, you've got like how many hundreds of different deities and gods.
yeah,
I think that partly the answer to that is when humans interpret the energy of ET races, you're
right,
getting that symbolism, whether it's the
right.
bird head or the Anubis, um,
Yeah,
that's attached to an ET race.
right. And
Um,
just like India, they have the blue race. They have the blue gods, and many
mhm.
of them have, I think it's 4 or 6 arms. I can't remember right now. But from what I was taught years ago, that was literally a race of beings, and that they blew themselves up. And there was actually physical traces of, I don't know, something from the bomb or whatever. I don't know what it was, um, spread out around a certain spot in India. And so I learned that like 20 years ago, and that's why I don't remember it. It's not fresh in my mind.
Yeah, and I agree with
Super
you.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that so what's the most common theme then when you get into whatever mythology of any culture or
Yeah.
historical thing? The common thread, the theme between them is they generally look a little different than us. They either have a spiritual, supernatural ability or a technological, tools that we don't have.
Right.
So there you go. Star races, aliens.
So interesting. So interesting. I think I could talk about this all day. So here's the last question. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Ooh, ouch.
I know. It's a hard one, isn't it?
Pain. That's a tough choice. Okay, well, I'm biased. I love Star Trek big time. I love Star Trek. Love Star Trek. Gonna have to side with Star Wars only because of my own particular beliefs in terms of like, galactic history. The Star Wars, originally created by George Lucas,
Right, right.
um, it depicts the Orion Wars, which is like where I spent so many incarnations and so many
Right.
thousands of years during these conflicts. So the Star Wars films are based on the Orion Wars.
Yeah.
And so I resonate with that narrative, that timeline, that aesthetic most only because of my affiliation and my connection to that time period and to those wars. Whereas like Star Trek, it would be like, to be honest, like Star Trek would be more contemporary in terms of like how I think space federations work. We have space police, and things like that. Like that so Star Trek would depict like more present day types of interactions, whereas
Right.
Star Wars
Right.
would be more historically accurate to galactic battles that lasted like millions of years.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I want to thank you so much. What you've told me is so interesting. It stimulated all sorts of new ideas and questions. And of course, I feel like we should cut short today and maybe we'll talk again. And maybe I'll ask you, like, what we'll do is we'll play a game. Who can top who? Who has the most interesting vision or dream or experience? Because there's so much out there, isn't there?
Yes. And I really appreciate you having me again, Sue. And I
Yeah.
I love the opportunity to talk and share my
Of
stories
course.
and
Yeah.
spread consciousness. And so this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'll be talking with you soon.
Thank you, Sue.
Bye-bye.